Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass. We're gonna die hard.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we love when growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Gene Lyons.
So good to be back.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. In a typical week, we would go out to the audience and we would have the audience select from 4 movie choices. But this week, guys, this is like a reunion show, like a Christmas NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Madonna reunion show where we are doing a Christmas movie of our selection. And we're just doing that straight away because we've been busy with Westworld over there on Shat on TV.
Yeah, I think Westworld had warped me a bit. I was watching today's film and looking for hidden messages and trying to find my way through the maze of the house, and it just wasn't quite the same. And then I remembered this is the movies.
I felt like I had been just like gnawing on some sort of a steak gristle for the last 10 weeks, just trying to get through to the core of it, just trying to work my teeth through it. And then this was just like a marshmallow of a movie. It was so wonderful to just sit back and enjoy something, take minor notes, and just let my brain kind of relax. I mean, man, it was like a vacation of a podcast.
Yeah, for those who have been following us along across our 31, soon-to-be 33 episodes of Westworld that we've done over the last 10 weeks, there is nothing more than I enjoy than getting back to like good old-fashioned 80s, 90s movie watching where I could just turn my brain off and enjoy it. And I know we wanted to like step back and like, okay, you know, we're going to make a splash back on Shat the Movies by doing a Christmas movie. But what's crazy is we've already done 2 Christmas movies. When you think about it, like we asked on Twitter, we were like, hey, we're going back to Shat the Movies now that Westworld's over. What movie should we do? And the first ones were like, do Die Hard. And then do Gremlins. We're like, fuck, we've already done those movies.
I mean, I'm starting to think that in the 80s, they only made movies around Christmas time. The rest of the year was nothing going on. But it's funny that, you know, we mentioned that we just kind of like cruised through the movie. And then I'm looking at the show notes and going, we took like 100 different notes on plot points, inconsistencies, and things that made us laugh. So really, guys, there's no escaping it. We were born to do this.
Yeah, so if this is your first time on Shat the Movies, so here's the format. So we'll outline the plot as we go along, and then just kind of talk about like what we thought of the movie and whether or not it held up. And we'll do a little bit of fact finding in the beginning. And there's a lot to talk about, surprisingly. And we'll do this within about 60 minutes. So before we dive into the movie, we like to play the trailer. Big D, cue up the 1990 film trailer of Home Alone.
When the McAllister family left on their Christmas vacation...
Did we miss the flight? No, you just made it. Yeah!
They forgot one small thing.
Have yourself...
I have a terrible feeling.
Christmas.
Did you lock up?
Let yourself be light.
Do we set the timers on the lights?
Mm-hmm. What else could we be forgetting?
Our troubles will be ours.
Kevin!
Home Alone.
Police in the northern suburbs are on the lookout for a pair of burglars who are calling themselves the Wet Bandits.
We know that you're in there.
It's Santa Claus and it's Elf.
Get off my property.
This is my house. I have to defend it.
Where's your mother?
My mom's in the car.
Where's your father?
He's at work.
What about your brothers and sisters?
I'm an only child.
Where do you live?
Can't tell you that.
Why not?
Because you're a stranger.
He's a kid. I mean, what can a kid do to us?
Kids are stupid. I know I was.
You still are, Marv.
This is it.
I don't care if I have to get out on your runway and hitchhike. I am going to get home to my son.
Yes! Where are you, you little creep?
I'm gonna kill that kid!
Why'd you take your shoes off?
Why do you dress like a chicken?
Gus Polinski, polka king of the Midwest. If you have to get to Chicago, we'll gladly drive you.
Hey, guys.
Yesterday, he was just a kid. But tonight, he's a home security system.
You guys give up, or you're thirsty for more?
From John Hughes.
You know, I got a feeling this is going to be your best Christmas ever.
A family comedy without the family. Home Alone.
Are you here all alone?
I'm 8 years old. You think I'd be here alone? I don't think so.
Directed by Chris Columbus. Coming November 16th.
So Home Alone is a 1990 American Christmas comedy film written and produced by John Hughes and directed by Chris Columbus. The film stars Macaulay Culkin as Kevin McCallister, a boy who is mistakenly left behind when his family flies to Paris for their Christmas vacation. Kevin initially relishes being home, but soon has to contend with two would-be burglars played by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. The film also features Catherine O'Hara and John Hurd as Kevin's parents, and a very big cameo by John Candy. Culkin was nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy, and after its release, Home Alone became the highest-grossing live-action comedy film of all time in the United States and held that record worldwide until it was overtaken by The Hangover Part 2 in 2011, which, to me, to be overtaken by The Hangover 2, really?
I didn't remember there even being a Hangover 2.
Oh, there's a Hangover 3.
No, my bigger question is how the hell was Macaulay Culkin nominated for an award for this movie?
We'll get to that.
Exclusively on his eyebrow work, I think.
It is the highest grossing Christmas movie of all time at the North American box office when adjusted for inflation, and Home Alone has spawned a successful franchise with 4. I didn't know there was 4. 4 sequels, including the 1992 film Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. It was released in 1990, and it was the second highest grossing movie in 1990. It came just behind the Demi Moore Patrick Swayze film Ghost. $476 million, which looking back on it, that's a lot of scratch.
Yeah, we had talked about 1984 being a good year. Looking at this list, it's not too bad. We had Ghost, Home Alone, Pretty Woman, which we've done, Dances with Wolves, Total Recall, Back to the Future 3, which I was shocked only did $244 million, Die Hard 2, and then how the hell did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles make $200 million? But other than that, decent year. What do you think? Any films in there you liked?
Are you hating on the live-action original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Are you kidding me? That movie was my childhood.
I think Big D is really revealing the generation gap here, because that movie was art. I absolutely loved it. I put Ninja Turtles right up there, almost as good as Ghostbusters in movies that I just loved as a kid.
Yeah, no kidding. That movie hit such a nerve with kids that you remember, like, it was like the first like PG kids movie. Do you remember? I remember going and seeing that movie multiple times, like with my friends and our parents dropping us off at the cinemas to go and see that. We're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We're not talking about Home Alone. I remember the studio had to create special cutouts of the turtles saying this movie's not for kids, dudes, or like, you know what I mean? Because it was like the first kid movie that talked to adults, like actually like taught to kids as kids talked. Does that make sense? Like Raphael like cursed, and it was like he was kind of like a rough and tumbler dude, and I think Casey Jones and April O'Neil like made out. I don't know. It was pretty rad. So we're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
And Home Alone.
Oh, okay, got it. So where were you guys when you watched Home Alone for the first time? Because I actually didn't see it in theaters. The first time I ever saw Home Alone was on VHS.
Yeah, I can actually remember seeing it in the theater. And what's odd is, yeah, it's a Christmas movie. But a lot of the other ones, like Gremlins, came out in the summer. So this is the first one that was in that I can remember from that holiday time frame. And I think it was in the middle of November. So I can remember seeing it in the theaters, but I don't remember exactly who I was with. So I was probably alone or with some friends.
Gene, did you see this in the theaters, or did you have to wait for VHS as well?
No, Raj, I'm like you. My family growing up, we did not see a movie in the theater unless it warranted being on a large screen. So like Top Gun, that's okay because there's jets and stuff. There's a lot of special effects, big screen. Anything else, if it was centered around dialogue or a comedy, we were relegated to the VHS.
Yeah, I just remember the trailers for this film, and it'd be nothing but Macaulay Culkin with there were, and even looking back on it now, watching back, it was just a bunch of ahs. You know what I mean? Like that was the humor of the movie.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that because I don't know if they used the same scream track for Macaulay Culkin. It sounded he has a very consistent, like conspicuously consistent scream throughout the movie, and that same face. And again, Big D mentioned surprised that he, the Golden Globe acknowledgement. I was fascinated because, I mean, yeah, granted he's a child, but how far child acting has come since this movie. I mean, all he did was look at the camera and scream a lot and use old man lines. It was weird.
Yeah, I stopped counting the screams at 6, and they just got progressively more annoying. And like you said, you're so spot on. Think about some of the child actors in like Game of Thrones, which is, what was it, Lady Mormont?
Yeah, Lady Mormont.
Yeah, the head of the Bear Islands. Mm-hmm. She's probably comparable age to Macaulay Culkin in this.
Absolutely.
I think we've come a long way.
Or even, what's her face? 11 from Stranger Things. I mean, how old is that kid? Maybe a little older.
You don't have to go that far. Like Haley Joel Osment, I believe, is the gold standard when it comes to child actors and the amount of talent that they have. Like if Haley Joel Osment was in Home Alone, this movie would have been amazing. It would have won an Oscar.
In Macaulay Culkin's defense, though, he did The Good Son and was incredibly dark in that. So,
Gene, in our research, you actually came across some interesting facts about Home Alone that are fascinating.
Yeah, there's a couple legacy moments and also just weird, odd trivia. First of all, that in Poland, of all places, Home Alone is basically a national treasure. So after communism fell, Home Alone became one of the first Western films shown in the country, and has then aired on national TV every year since 1990.
Yeah, I got also another interesting fact. I found that Home Alone actually turned into a verb, that Hollywood started using the term "you got home aloned" when a film would come out the same weekend as yours and kill your box office. So it stuck with Hollywood and is still used to this day because of what the success of Home Alone did for 12 straight weeks at the box office.
Yeah. The other thing that I find fascinating is that since Home Alone, Christopher Columbus, who, by the way, wrote scripts for Gremlins and The Goonies, we've done The Gremlins, and Goonies has been on our watch list for quite some time, has gone on to become one of Hollywood's premier family-friendly movie makers as the director of Home Alone 2, Mrs. Doubtfire, and 2 Harry Potter movies. But one lesson he learned from the Home Alone is that when you agree to work with a kid actor, you're also agreeing to work with his family. He is quoted as saying, "I was much younger, and I was really too naive to think about the family environment as well. We didn't know that much about the family in the beginning. As we were shooting, we learned a little bit more. The stories are hair-raising. I was casting a kid who truly had a troubled family life. In 1995, Culkin's parents, who were never married, engaged in a very public and nasty legal battle over his fortune." And this is like what I remember of Macaulay Culkin, like almost like that. He was talented. Like there's no denying he has a little bit of talent, and he's done some really good. I remember he was great in My Girl. Gene, you said he was really good in
The Good Son.
Is that the one where he pushes over his brother? He kills his brother or something?
Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert! Right? Yeah. But I remember, like, wasn't he the first to like divorce his parents?
I think he may have, but just imagine if you come out with this gigantic hit, and halfway through it you realize that your main child star that you've kind of hitched your wagon to is a complete disaster, and knowing you're going to have to deal with his parents for the subsequent sequels.
This was like the era of Hollywood where they would just like be at a mall and just be like, "Ooh, you look exactly what we're looking for." Remember how big of a disaster the Terminator 2 kid was?
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, here's the thing. Eddie Furlong and, like, a lot of these other guys, they went on to kind of, fall apart. Even the Coreys, like, had their issues. Macaulay Culkin, currently, I mean, he tours with the Pizza Underground, which I think is fascinating. It's a band that does Velvet Underground covers, but are all pizza-themed. I saw him live, like, a year or two ago. Totally cool guy. He's got his little band. He hangs out with all of his, Williamsburg hipsters in Brooklyn. And he's making music, touring, being a cool guy. And he was like really chill, easy to talk to. So after all that he went through, guy ended up pretty well adjusted and relatively speaking.
child stars, self-destructing isn't something that was only in the 80s and 90s. You just have to look back to Jake Lloyd as another great recent one who just had a complete meltdown. Anakin Skywalker from The Phantom Menace.
Well, and again, I know we've talked 6 minutes about Home Alone here in the last 11 minutes, but they had the perfect child actor for Phantom Menace. If you ever watched the special edition of Phantom Menace, I think it was like a young Ryan Gosling or some shit like that. Like they had like the perfect child actor. He nails young Anakin, but George Lucas, this was his coffee and tea phase where all he did is sit in a director's chair and drink coffee. He incorrectly selected Jake Lloyd, which almost destroyed the Star Wars franchise. But anyway, all right, on to Home Alone. So here's what we'll do. We'll go through the major plot points, talk about them, and for those of you, so you don't even have to go back and watch the movie. We're doing the homework for you guys. So anyway, so the opening of the movie, it's in Chicago, as most John Hughes movies are. Which, by the way, did you guys sense a little Harry Potter musical similarity between the themes of Harry Potter and Home Alone?
I didn't really pick that up. I mean, there's a little bit of that whimsical, child orchestra, like a child chorus sort of thing. I get that. But maybe it's the fact that I know the Home Alone song so well. And then also I've listened to, for a long time, Harry Potter's, anthem was basically my ringtone. So I think I know the two apart. But I think to the casual Potter fan, they may seem similar, but upon further inspection, Hogwarts anthem is quite different.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because I, for the longest time, was wearing normal earbuds, like when we would do the podcast, when I would listen to movies. This was the first movie that I've actually watched with my decent set of headphones, and I found myself sitting back and being like, wow, this score is wonderful. And now I really don't think it necessarily was the best. It was nice that there were some orchestral pieces, but my headphones made them sound great.
Yeah, this is not a plug. We're not getting paid by them, but the Audio-Technica M30X, man, it is the sweetest. I have at least 3 other friends, because of me owning them, had gone out and bought them and just rave about them. So yeah, Audio-Technica, you're doing good work.
Listen, if you work for Audio-Technica, we will sell out. We will become corporate in a minute. You don't even have to ask.
Yeah, we also use the Audio-Technica ATR 2100 microphones too. So if you're hearing this smooth sound of our voices and enjoying that, or in Roger's case, the raspy grating percussion of his voice, it's all being brought to you by Audio-Technica.
So it starts off in Chicago, as most John Hughes films do. The McAllister family is preparing for a Christmas vacation in Paris. On the night before their departure, the entire family gathers at Peter and Kate's home, the parents of Kevin McCallister, played by Macaulay Culkin, where their son, Kevin, again played by Macaulay Culkin, is ridiculed by not only his siblings, but also his cousins. After a scuffle with his older brother, Buzz, Kevin is sent to the 3rd floor of the house because in every John Hughes movie, they have giant houses in the suburbs where he wishes that his family would disappear. During the night, heavy winds cause damage to the power lines, which causes all the alarm clocks in the house to reset. Consequently, the family oversleeps, and in the confusion and rush to get to the airport in time to catch their flight, Kevin is accidentally left behind.
So, Roger, a point on this that I really love about 80s movies is it's a great example of back then they really tried to attempt to answer the questions at least, right? So you mentioned a couple things there, that they put him on the 3rd floor so he wouldn't be seen. And then the phone lines go out, the power goes out, which makes the clocks go out. And then they even had that little kid, the Mitch McAllister kid, come over so that the head count was wrong, because those are questions you're going to ask. Did nobody count the kids? And so it's wonderful that they really took, I appreciated that attention to detail where they at least made it seem plausible that you could forget a child.
I think it was actually Mitch Murphy, the neighbor who hopped into the van and was accidentally miscounted by the sister.
What kind of gas mileage does this make? What do they have in France?
Yeah, what kid just randomly walks around the neighborhood talking to adult men in vans? That's a recipe for disaster.
Oh, that little kid's getting kidnapped next year.
So, on top of that, though, I did say that they answered a lot of the questions, but it seemed odd to me that Kevin, arguably the most memorable of all the children. The loudmouth, like troublemaking, like pain in the ass could be forgotten. That's the kid you always remember. That's the squeaky wheel, you know?
But I thought the way they described and kind of laid out the factors which led to them forgetting him were pretty good. You mentioned the missed head count, but you also had the spilled milk, which led to the tickets being thrown in the trash. So they didn't have an extra ticket missing him. But with all this going on, do we think he had good parents or bad parents?
Well, no, I mean, based on the interaction he had with his mother, it was horrible parenting. Like, I mean, just the effects that long-term effects that would have on his self-esteem. I mean, the kid's like on it. Kevin's sitting there saying like, that everyone hates him and all that stuff, and his mother's not refuting it. Like, she's letting him go along with it. There was this 80s fascination with the one-liner kids, and he's just like kicking them out. I mean, there's just so much hateful language going on in this household that even me, I'm not a terribly sensitive person when it comes to language. I was a little like, geez, like go easy on the kid. Come on.
Any other family members stand out to you?
Well, I loved Buzz personally. I thought Buzz was great. I thought Buzz, you know what? Buzz is, and I'm going to go on record here. Buzz is the most developed older brother character in an 80s, 90s movie that I've ever seen, because he's rude as normal older brothers would be to their younger brothers, right? Who always want to be around him. And he's like, you're a turd brain. And he's doing like the weird science, like throw up, like, eating his cheese pizza. But then when he's gone, when they're in Paris, and I'm jumping ahead here, but he's like, listen, I really hope that he's doing okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like I would want to be in his position. When he gets back at the end, he like gives him a little fist bump, like, thanks turd brain for not, burning down the house. Like that was the most realistic character in my opinion. Like I want there to be a Buzz movie.
For me, it was Uncle Frank, because Uncle Frank was like such an asshole in this movie. He's stealing stuff on the flight. He's insulting children. And then his sweaters alone were like a crime against humanity.
Dude, also on top of that, he doesn't pay for the pizza, right? He calls Kevin out for his spilling and causing the scene, which actually leads to him going upstairs. Then he's in Paris. He's all about staying on vacation. And fuck Kevin if he's gone, kidnapped, dead. Who cares? They're not going to ruin his Christmas. And he compares. He says, oh, it's not that bad. I also forgot my reading glasses.
Yeah, no, listen, like I probably would be that uncle if I was in this family. I'd be like, listen, I'm in Paris. I have a trip planned for me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be here with all this family members. Like, I'm not going to pay $100. Which, by the way, the price of pizza, like, it's stayed relatively flat for the past 30 years. Like, because it was 10 pizzas at $12 a pop. Like the price of inflation relative to pizza. I mean, we're doing pretty well, guys.
Yeah, but I don't think Little Nero's is that great a quality.
Well, let me ask you guys this. So, Gene, you mentioned that in 80s or 90s movies, you appreciated the fact that they tried to answer some questions. I also enjoyed that the movie did a lot of fun things and a lot of consistent fun things. In a comedy, you don't see a lot of. For one thing, you almost have to look at like the new remake of Ghostbusters just to see the disparities between the way they make comedies now as big budget, movies versus what they did in the 1990s. Like this movie was a tight script. One of the funniest things and the funniest gags is people constantly hitting the statue. Like it wasn't like every car you had to see the car hitting the statue. There'd be times where it would flash to the car and like the person picking up the statue, putting it back. Like that was a funny gag that today they'd beat you over the head with. But back then there were little telltale things that like you were like, oh, well, this is a very well written, well thought of script.
Yeah, it takes me back to like Better Off Dead. The little things that would happen in several movies in the background that they don't even draw attention to, but there was something funny happening. Better Off Dead, there's a scene where they're at the dance and this balloon gets loose and like there's just this chubby kid like chasing after it. They don't call it out. They don't even focus on him. He's kind of, it's a shallow depth of field and he's just in the background doing it. But every time I see that movie, I just die laughing. For me, the other thing that was, really interesting about this is, speaking of characters who appear in this scene, when Joe Pesci's standing there as a cop, I was like, wait a minute, I thought he was a robber in this movie. And it didn't occur to me, like until they explain it that like he's casing the joint dressed as a cop, and nobody seems to care that there's a cop standing in the living room. But again, within the first 30 seconds or a minute, I'm annoyed by this because I'm like, no one notices him. But then as it goes on, it gets funnier and funnier because everybody's interacting with him, but nobody cares.
You can totally tell this is a white privileged neighborhood because apparently it's perfectly acceptable for a police officer to be in your house, hanging out with you. You know what I mean? And everyone's perfectly okay with it.
In any other neighborhood, they would think something was wrong.
So there's this meme circling about the house, the cost of the house, the cost of all these trips to France. It's been going all around the internet, and people are asking, well, what does Kevin's dad do that he can afford all this? And as I get older, I wonder about it more. Is how the meme goes. And I didn't realize until this, probably this, I don't know, the fifth or sixth watching of this movie, that the way they explain it is even weirder. It's that the brother who lives in France is paying for all of it. So the house is one issue, but then also, like, again, the question rises for this many people, for 15 people to fly round trip to France with 4 of the seats being in first class. I don't even want to know what that costs.
Yeah, no kidding. So Kevin wakes up to find the house empty. Thinking that his wish has come true, he is overjoyed with his newfound freedom. However, Kevin's joy turns to fear as he encounters his next-door neighbor, Old Man Marley, who is rumored to have murdered his family with a snow shovel back in 1958. He also encounters the Wet Bandits, Harvey and Marv, played by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern, a pair of burglars who have been breaking into other vacant houses in the neighborhood and have targeted the McAllisters' house. Kevin initially manages to keep them away by making the house look as if the family is home, but they eventually realize the deception.
Okay, so here's my things on this. Kevin is sad and scared for all of about 2 seconds. Then his sadness turns to, I made my family disappear, with a gleeful smile. And as a young child, back in those days, what do you remember that was the first thing he chose to do with his freedom?
Oh yeah, he got right into Buzz's private stash. Went right for the porn and the fireworks.
And that was spot on. To me, that just rang true as a young boy in that time.
All right, let's be honest, though. Okay, well, now Kevin is 8. Now, at 8 years old, maybe I wasn't that interested in. Like, I'm trying to think of when was the first time you saw or got into a pile of nudie mags? Which is, guys, if you guys don't know what the nudie mags are, for those millennials who are listening to the podcast, a nudie mag was growing up, there was no internet where you go on Pornhub or YouTube. You had to go and find a nudie mag out in the woods, buried underneath a log that children of other generations had left. And it was from 1982.
Yeah, I mean, that was I've got a friend, and his nickname is Field of Creams. And his whole story was that one day he was walking to school, and he's going through this field, taking a shortcut, and he finds a Playboy, and he looks at it, and he puts it back, and every day he would go back to that field, and then one day it was gone, but he still kept going back to the field. That's how valuable a nudie mag was back in the day. If you found it, first of all, you left it there because other people might need it too. But secondly, it was that sort of thing. I remember I had an older cousin who was just old enough to get magazines, and I knew exactly where he hid that thing. And anytime I got a chance, I would go look at it and make sure I placed it exactly back in the right place because he didn't want to get caught, obviously. Now, speaking of porn, Angels with Dirty Souls, when I saw him put that VHS tape in, my first thought was it was going to be a porn. I mean, Angels with Dirty Souls? I was like, I don't remember this at all.
But yeah, it always seemed, when you're talking about hiding the dirty magazine, I'm so glad it wasn't just me. You had to find a spot. It was like you were burying treasure. You would try to find a container that might keep it dry. You had to put it in a spot where no one else would come upon it. I'm glad I wasn't the only one there. But yeah, I think a porno in the VCR tape would have taken this movie down a whole new path.
So the best thing I think that Kevin found, though, after he throws the porn aside and then he sees the fireworks, is that picture of Buzz's girlfriend. And just that line, my favorite line of the whole movie is that, Buzz, your girlfriend, woof. And to this day, I use woof. I never knew where it came from, but now I remember, now I realize, that's where we all picked it up, was Home Alone.
It's one of my go-to memes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's the Kevin McCallister, like, shocked face, and then right underneath it, you can put whatever photo you want in it, and it still works to this day. Like, it's a 30-year-old joke, hits every single time.
Yeah, well, a little background to that I was reading is they felt it was too mean to actually laugh at the physical appearance of a young girl, so that is one of the sons of one of the cast members, dressed up as a girl.
That's awesome. With Old Man Marley, kind of getting into his character, I love that, this reminds me of The Burbs and other movies that I really love. There's always that weird neighbor that there was some, myth about, but then he turned out to be kind of all right. But Old Man Marley, the story that they give him, again, was just one of the things I love about the movie. I love a dark tale, and the fact that they just wove in this shovel slaying out of nowhere. And then the kids are just, they live next door to him, and oh well. It was just amazing.
Where do you think Old Man Marley gets his money from? Because this is a fairly wealthy North Chicago suburb. There's all the homes on this are probably multi-million-dollar homes, right?
I don't know about multi-million-dollar in that neighborhood, but yeah, approaching $1 million. But probably a retiree, smart with his money. He seems like a very go-getter. He's still shoveling snow at his age, and good-looking guy. Maybe he was some sort of a J. Crew model or something like that. I don't know.
Now, I definitely like what Kevin is doing at this point because, again, one of the things that I enjoyed when I was a kid, I was like, it'd be so great to be like Home Alone, right? Do all the things you wanted to do. Did you find the things outside of him looking at, porno mags in his brother's stash, the eating of the junk food, the watching the terrible movies, like the idea that, the family is playing a big prank on him. Did you find this believable?
I thought a lot of it was, but the BB gun in the house, I don't buy it. I accidentally shot my dad's window out once with the BB gun. I was trying to shoot from the hip, and it ricocheted off and took out the window. It was a very traumatic experience. So he had some balls shooting the BB gun in the house. Yeah, sitting around eating, what does he say, that he's eating junk and watching rubbish? Yeah, I could see doing that. Sitting up all night. As a kid, what else could you really hope for? Just not having to go to bed, eating whatever you want, and watch whatever you want on TV.
Well, I didn't really kind of understand his whole inner monologue that he had with himself in front of the mirrors. Like he's grooming himself. Is he just trying to be adult? Is that what's happening there?
Oh, that was a very 80s thing that you see John Cusack do it in a lot of movies where he's kind of just self-narrating. Ferris Bueller, also prime example of that. That was a John Hughes thing where he had kind of the protagonist talk to himself a lot in a very matter-of-fact, detailed cataloging of activities. So I like that harkened to a John Hughes style. And also I found that kind of endearing, that he was kind of rattling off all the stuff he did and then, and then ends up, burning his face with the aftershave. But interestingly enough, though, there are certain points where you got to wonder, like, why is he doing so many adult things? Why is he going grocery shopping? Why does he have to do laundry? Like, it's been like a day. Like, what's going on there?
I never got the laundry. That was one of my things in my notes I wrote down there. Which, by the way, like, I can remember as a kid, one of the scenes that really freaked me out that I look back at now as a mid-30s adult, I'm like,
if you say the basement,
I was super scared.
That scared the shit out of me even to this day.
Oh my God. No, the furnace talking to him as a kid watching this movie. I don't know. It came out in 1990. I was 10 years old. I remember thinking to myself, holy crap. And I grew up in Florida, right? I didn't even know what a furnace was, which probably freaked me out even more. So I totally related to the kid going down into a basement being afraid of that area.
Okay. So at this point, we're also introduced to the wet bandits. And I really just think they were a bunch of dicks. Like, you're breaking into people's homes on the holidays, and then you're going to turn on the water. From someone who suffered a little bit of water damage, that water damage would make the robbery seem like nothing. You could destroy the house in Chicago in the winter by letting it flood. That's a dick move.
Yeah, one of the things that was really weird is I felt, and I can't believe I'm going to say this about Home Alone, but I felt this didn't ring true. These guys, they're meticulous enough to case the joint, know what time the lights go on, know who's home, who isn't. Then they break into homes. They're playing with toys. They're like knocking stuff down. They're making a mess. They're leaving the water on. And then on top of that, the answering machine goes off, and they've got the presence of mind to go, oh, the McAllisters, and connect that to the family down the street who's a friend. But for some reason, they do not recognize Kevin, who's standing right out in the street for like ever. They're not like, oh, that's the kid that I saw the other day whose mom spoke to me face to face about the kid. You know, there's only 5 houses on this block that are vacant or something like that. It's absolutely bizarre that somehow they didn't notice it. But yeah, I agree, Big D. They just seem to be dicks that they didn't even seem really interested in stealing stuff. They just seemed like they wanted to make a mess.
Well, it's so funny because, again, I thought this was a major plot point. But then, I don't know if it's Marv or Harry, I forget but Joe Pesci says to Daniel Stern, he's like, why do you do that? What are you doing? Like, it's like even though it seems ridiculous, John Hughes had the foresight to like make this a plot point to where, Joe Pesci's character says, why do you do this? And he's like, it's our calling card. And then it comes back to bite him at the end. Right. So it made sense.
Are we also led to believe that they're actually driving their own plumbing van, or did they steal that? Because it would be quite dumb to be casing a neighborhood, parking on the street for hours on end in a plumbing van, and you call yourself the Wet Bandits. Was that a stolen truck?
Oh, no, I think it was their truck. I think that was their cover, right? It was that it doesn't seem that odd for them to be going in and out of the house with tools and stuff like that if they've got, a van. But yeah, calling yourself the Wet Bandit and then having the plumbing. But again, maybe it's the sort of thing of hiding right under someone's nose. Are the cops really going to suspect plumbers of being the Wet Bandits? Plumbers would be loath to flood a house. Come on.
But did you even read the side of their van? It says, OK Plumbing and Heating, your flood control experts. They're just asking to get caught. These two dudes want to go to jail.
All right, so the Wet Bandits. All right, so I never lived up north. I'm a southern hemisphere in North America kind of guy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gene and Big D. You guys both come from the north. Don't you have to do something with your water if you go away for extended period of times in the winter?
Yes, my parents have a place in upstate New York, and every time we would leave it for the winter and go back down towards the city, you would have to make sure that the heat was on. And I'm talking not at a comfortable temperature, but you had to keep it like in the high 40s or 50s so that the pipes wouldn't freeze. And God forbid the propane would run out and the heat would go out during the winter, all the pipes would burst. And you would come back to, I'm telling you, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage. So yeah, my father lived in fear the entire winter that the heat would go out and it would just destroy the house.
So Kate is the mom of Kevin. She discovers mid-flight that Kevin is missing, and upon arrival in Paris, the family discovers that all the flights to Chicago for the next 2 days are fully booked. Peter, the husband, and the rest of the family go to his brother Rob's apartment in the city, while Kate manages to get a flight back to the United States, only to get as far as Scranton, Pennsylvania. She attempts to book a flight to Chicago, but again, everything is booked. Unable to accept this, Kate is overheard by Gus Polinski, played by John Candy, the lead member of a traveling polka band, which offers to let her travel with them to Winnetka on their way to Milwaukee in a moving van, which she gracefully accepts.
I hate to play into gender roles here, and I don't want to be the guy that says you're not a man if you XYZ, you're not a woman if you ABC. What kind of a man leaves his wife at the airport to try to find a standby flight home while he just takes the rest of the family and goes and chills at his brother's house in France? This really, really upset me. As a guy, and again, I hate to play into some sort of a gender role, but I would say, listen, I got this. You guys go, relax, whatever. I'm going to stay here at the airport. I'm going to make shit happen. I was very, very upset with Kevin's dad seems just like a real wimp in all of this.
Yeah, forget about male, female. Any parent of a child, both those parents should have been fighting separately to try to get back however they could as fast as they could. You have Uncle Frank there. Let the kids go with him to Paris, and you're going to fight your way back. So yeah, that gave me a problem. But their attempts to kind of find Kevin were a bit half-assed. They try calling all their friends in Chicago, but yet nobody is there. They call all the neighbors, then they call the police, and they talk to the wonderful Sergeant Balzac. Every cop in these John Hughes movies are just completely inept. Do we feel they could have been doing a little bit more to try to get someone out to Kevin to see if he's okay?
Yeah, I feel like if Carl Winslow from Die Hard had shown up, he would have gotten to the bottom of things. You're doing a welfare check on an 8-year-old boy. You don't just knock and go, "Oh, it looks all right. I'm out of here." It made no sense to me.
Let me ask you guys, have you ever been welfare checked? Has anyone ever welfare checked you?
No, there's been no need to.
I mean,
Really?
I've gotten a welfare check before. Does that count?
No, that's what I mean. Like someone called welfare on you.
No, I got a check from welfare.
Oh, I see what you're saying. All right. So I've been welfare checked before. Somebody sent, I had a girlfriend welfare check me in Las Vegas because I wasn't answering my phone and anything like that. I had gone out the night before and just gotten, unfortunately, blackout drunk. And the welfare checks are no joke. Like if you're not answering, they come into the room. So like you would have to imagine that the Chicago police, which Gene, you lived in Chicago, they're not the, how do I say? I mean, like if they need to bust down a door, they're going to bust down a door, right? They're going to try and get inside.
I mean, yeah, in this sort of a situation, there's certain things they will react to and certain things they won't. If you get in a car accident, they don't care. If there's a child in a wealthy neighborhood who is at home alone and they need home alone, that's why they call it that. They're gonna do what they have to do. And what was interesting about the whole thing though is that at some point during the movie, the phone service also miraculously comes back, but no one's still trying to call Kevin.
Right, exactly. That's listen. The other thing that I have the problem, and maybe this is just my selfish. I don't have a child, right? And but I would think enough of my kid at 8 years old that it could probably handle himself at least for 2 days, right? I'm in Paris. I have a ticket back to America or back to Chicago in 2 days. Right? They're like dogs. Like if you forget, like, listen, I have 2 dogs, so I can say this, but if I forget to feed my dogs for 2 days, I know at least as long as they have water, they're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, but your dogs don't have a way to open up the front door or to burn the house down or to get abducted. There's a lot less things that are going to happen to your dogs.
All right, so you're a parent, Big D. You have a 1-year-old daughter.
Correct.
All right, are you pretty safe in, like, she's a smart kid. I've seen her, she learns, right? You're going to raise her pretty well. You're an intelligent guy. Your wife is more intelligent than you are and, much, much more beautiful. But, like, she's going to be taught proper procedures in the event that, she's left home alone, right? Kevin McCallister, for as much of a brat as he is, when he goes shopping at the grocery store, like he adheres to the rules of like 80s children. Like the cashier is asking him questions like, where do you live? And he even says, I can't tell you that. She's like, why? Because you're a stranger. Like, so if a kid understands the concepts of that, he's going to be okay home alone for 2 days.
I think the difference though is that they establish again, this is John Hughes being smart here. They say at the beginning, he's called helpless, les incompetents. Like they're pointing out the fact that everyone's view of Kevin is that he doesn't know how to take care of himself. As they say, he can't even tie his own shoe. And so I think that that's the impression they have. So we got to rush home because Kevin, of all the children, has no idea how to take care of himself.
He's traumatized by the mere fact that he has to pack his own luggage. And how are you going to do that? But then, a day later, he's using coupons to buy milk. I don't buy it.
To this day, gentlemen, I've dated women who, the night before a big trip, still freak out over the fact that they have to pack their own bags.
Were they 8 years old?
No, they were like 28.
So John Candy as the Polka King, Raj, you mentioned that that you didn't remember him being in it. I didn't either. And the second he showed up on the screen, I got super excited. John Candy, just a rare talent, so good. What I love about him is that he's like simultaneously funny and endearing. Like you just want to hug him, but he's also like cracking you up. My favorite thing that he did in the whole, all the stories were great, but when he's talking about the tyke that was left behind with the corpse at the funeral home. And he says he was okay after 6 or 7 weeks. He started talking again, and it's just like it's not a deadpan delivery. I don't even know how to classify it, but it's so good. Also, in closing on the John Candy thing, for my part on it, don't ride in the back of moving trucks. That is so unsafe.
Yeah, this is one other thing I want to call into question, the mother's common sense. She's already left her son behind, and now what seems like a great idea, to get into the back of a U-Haul with a guy you don't know and 7 of his friends. This is another recipe for disaster. Okay, you talked about worrying about leaving my daughter home alone. I want to make sure my daughter never gets into the back of a U-Haul with 8 dudes, okay? And your question, hold on, about the U-Haul. I got a quick story here from my personal life. In college, don't judge me here, I was the president of the fraternity, right? And we had a social event where we needed to get 50-some-odd people about 18 miles from where school was to the local port because we were doing a booze cruise. At that point, we really don't have much money, so I thought it would be a great idea to rent the biggest U-Haul we could and line it with sofas. So we ratchet strapped the sofas to the wall. Going there was cake. It was beautiful. I didn't take into account what a full 8 hours of drinking and then a moving U-Haul in complete darkness with 50 inebriated college kids. I opened up the back door when we got back, mercifully safe. It was like a horror show. There was vomit all over the couches. People had passed out. It was absolutely one of the dumbest decisions I'd ever made in my life.
Don't feel too bad, Big D, because, again, I'm notorious for going on moped rallies. One of the things they do at moped rallies, they have a chase truck, and the chase truck picks you up when your moped breaks down, and they do break down. And they did the same thing. So you can take that same recipe of drunks with their mopeds, because when people's bikes break down, there's nothing to do but sit there and drink, So they're sitting there drinking, got picked up. So now you got leaking fuel out of a vintage moped. So people are getting the fumes. You got people smoking cigarettes. You got people still drinking in the back. And the same thing, absolute shit show. So maybe we have a particular sensitivity to the vans, but I agree that under no circumstances should you get into the back of a U-Haul with an entire polka band you don't know.
Is it just me, or was every white person comedy, did it have, like in the 1980s, did it involve some sort of polka or polka reference?
Yeah, that's just you.
No, I mean, it's the Midwest. It's polka's very big, and polka's actually a lot of fun. I don't know if you've been to any polka events, but it's a good time.
Okay, well, let's break down what Kevin McCallister's mom had to give up and still end up in the back of a budget truck. So she has, mind you, 2 first-class tickets that leave 2 days later. Plus she gives up a pocket translator, $500 cash, and I think like a ring, right? Or a fake Rolex. Well, listen, I'm sure I would enjoy my kids. I'm sure I would love my kids, but I'm not going to give up that to like only make it to, DFW, then somewhere in the Midwest in Ohio to only then ride in the back of a budget truck. Like, that's not going to happen.
When you have kids, Rod, you would give up anything to get to them. So yes, that's realistic. But this is why I hate old people. That old lady clearly sees this woman as desperate. Does she give it up for just the 2 first-class tickets? No, she holds her feet to the fire. She deserves, I don't want to say I hope that plane goes down, but she's a bad woman. Bad woman.
Wow.
Wait, Big D, you don't know what she's got to get to. You don't know what's waiting for her on the other side. Maybe she's going to see her kids who are sick in a hospital, or maybe she's going to see her grandchild who's just born, or maybe you never know.
You're correct. I'm not a mind reader, but she didn't vocalize any of that. She told her husband's like, hey, come on, let's go. And she kind of brags about the haul that she's gotten from poor Miss McCallister. And also, pre 9/11, could we just wheel and deal tickets right in front of the counter?
Oh yeah, it was very loose. You could make it from home to international flight in like 10 minutes. Like it didn't matter. Like you could still be like, I think it's mentioned somewhere in the movie that they have 45 minutes. Their plane takes off at 45 minutes. They're on a super shuttle, and they still make it to their plane on time. And I think the American airline, the gate person is like, oh, you guys just sit anywhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like that was flight taking. Oh, it was beautiful back in the 80s and 90s. Like it was great. It was luxury everywhere you went. But anyway, on Christmas Eve, Kevin overhears the burglars, Harry and Marv, discussing plans for breaking into his house that night. Kevin goes to church and watches a choir perform. He meets there Old Man Marley, who sits with Kevin, and they briefly speak. He learns that Old Man Marley is actually a nice man and that the rumors about him are false. Old Man Marley tells Kevin he is watching the choir because his granddaughter is singing, but he never gets to see her because he and his son are estranged and have not been on speaking terms for quite some time. Kevin suggests that he reconcile with his son.
The thing with Old Man Marley that had me curious was, upon watching that, at first I thought I take the whole movie as an allegory for A Christmas Carol, right? It's a parallel there, right? Like the waking up and seeing what the world would be like, or you also see it on Miracle on 30, or sorry, It's a Wonderful Life. So at first I thought, oh, okay, the old man is the ghost of Christmas future. He's showing Kevin what life is like if you don't mend those fences, if you don't patch those bridges, and then I noticed that he's got the stigmata. Is he Jesus? He's got a wound. You see at the store when he puts his hand down on the counter, he's got a bandage over his palm, and then later when I think he shakes Kevin's hand or something like that, and he's got the bandage on the back of the hand, which shows that basically something has pierced his entire hand. And I go, and there's a couple things like that, the Christmas Carol and the Jesus reference, where I don't know where they're going with that, and I kind of was expecting them to explore it further. Like, at the end, Kevin sees that the old man wasn't there ever.
Yeah, when you first mentioned that to me, Gene, I thought you were a bit crazy. But watching it, it is clear. The first time we see him in the I think it's the pharmacy where Kevin shoplifts the toothbrush, there is a wound that goes clear through his hand. The second scene in the church, he has a Band-Aid on the outside. And the final scene, when he's shaking Kevin's hand, it's healed. This is not... And the camera pauses on it, so we notice it. And also, the second time we see him with the Band-Aid, it's followed quickly by Kevin retelling him a story about a friend of his who got nailed because of a rumor of wearing dinosaur pajamas. The religious references here had to have been some maybe plot line that they had abandoned, or it just seemed odd.
I also thought it was odd that it's just a good thing that the burglars didn't hit while Kevin was at church, because it seems like if you're trying to defend your home against intruders, maybe not being there is, or just stay at the church. It's not worth losing your life over, your parents' stuff that's probably insured anyway.
That's one thing I didn't get. You just made friends with your neighbor who's at home. Tell him, hey, you look like someone now I can trust. We've formed a bond here. I like you. You seem to be a good man. Just to let you know, someone's going to come and rob me, and they might rob you. Like, just tell them right now. Tell an adult. You know what I mean? There's a cop chases him, for Christ's sake, right? Over a toothbrush. Are you telling me that the Chicago cops are going to arrest this kid? If he just tells them the story, okay, yeah, you're right. The Chicago police would probably arrest him. But if you would tell him the story, he would still be safe.
Side note, Old Man Marley died in 2011, so rest in peace. I was a bummer when I was doing some research on him to see what else he had been in. I was like, he was in, I believe, Close Encounters and some other movies, but he was a poet and actor. He died in 2011, so R.I.P. Old Man Marley.
So Kevin returns home and rigs the house with numerous booby traps. Harry and Marv, of course, break in, spring in the traps, and suffering various injuries. While the duo pursues Kevin around the house, he calls the police and flees the house, luring the duo to the neighboring Murphy vacant home. Harry and Marv manage to catch him and discuss how they will get their revenge, but Old Man Marley sneaks in and knocks them both unconscious with his snow shovel before they can do anything bad to Kevin. The police arrive and arrest Harry and Marv, having identified all the houses they burglarized due to the latter's habit of flooding them.
Okay, this gets us to the battle plan. This is where the movie falls apart for me. So far, we've kind of been praising John Hughes for having stuff make sense. Now suddenly things make no sense at all. How does Kevin know that they're going to arrive exactly at 9 p.m.? Like, he's sitting down to his mac and cheese, all of a sudden he's like, ruh-roh, here they come.
No, I got to tell you, he did hear them. When he was at the back door and they realized Kevin's home, they said, let's come back tonight at 9. He's just lucky that they were very punctual burglars, that they didn't come a few minutes early or a few minutes later.
Okay, again, this fell apart for me because, number one, he is one man, right? It takes me, 2 hours to vacuum my house. Are you telling me that I'm setting highly, planned out, booby traps? I'm doing this in a span of 2 hours. So think about this. It gets dark in the north. Okay, so I could imagine that potentially he leaves the church at about 5 p.m. The burglars arrive at 9. Are you telling me in 4 hours he sprung an entire zip line from the upstairs window across to his treehouse?
Now, Raj, interestingly, if you want to, err on the side of a suspension of disbelief here, he's a very quick kid. I mean, he outruns a cop. He runs all around the house. He's got a lot of energy there. But also, none of these traps was that complicated. When I was a kid, I thought these were like Rube Goldberg machines. When I went back and watched it, I was like, you got some micro machines, you got some broken ornaments, you got like water on the stairs. I was more impressed with his ability to clean things up that quickly, honestly, not necessarily set the traps.
Well, I'm going to also add in the show notes, because it's a bit too long to read here, but there was an actual group of physicians who went back and looked at the movie and all of his traps and actually showed what were the likely injuries that would have been suffered. Ranging from the BB gun and the ornaments being broken underfoot to the paint buckets and the blowtorch, and they list them out in rank of what would really happen.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I actually made notes here too, and the one that struck me was the iron dropping from basically the dumbwaiter down into the basement onto your head. That's going to fracture your skull for sure. Like, there's no way that doesn't break your head open.
Yeah, so if I could talk about some of the booby traps here, which one do you think would have done the most damage? You voted for the iron there, Gene?
The iron or the paint can.
I think that paint can hits you square in the face. Your entire jaw, your nose is exploding.
Are we to believe that paint can was filled?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, yeah, that thing swung with a vengeance.
Okay. What do you think? Kevin's going to do a half measure?
I always thought it was the nail through the foot, right? Because you have to think the long-lasting effects of tetanus. You know what I mean? And those guys, they're burglars. They don't have any insurance of any kind. They don't want to be caught. You think they're going to a hospital? This is the 80s.
No, you know that the paint can was the worst simply by their reaction to it. After they're hit in the face is when we start to really see, what their character is. It's the first time that the Wet Bandits actually say that they're going to kill him. It is no longer a burglary. Harry says, "You're dead, kid." And then Marv tells him, "I'll snap off your cojones and boil them in motor oil." It's turning dark here.
What's strange is, and this just gets back to the puritanical ranking system for movies here, is that you've got Harry, who basically is not allowed to curse. And so if ever a movie needed cursing, it's this one, because his little like Looney Tunes rassafrassin mumbling thing got old real quick with me. If you get shot in the dick with a pellet gun and all you're doing is rah, 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 that it really bothered me. I know we want to protect our children or whatever, but it was so distracting. I just wanted him to yell fuck or shit or something, to help me feel his pain.
How many takes do you think it took Joe Pesci to not curse? That's what I want to know.
It's all dubbed in.
It's all ADR. Got it. Yeah.
But it is one thing that, Big D, you bring it up, is that it's amazing to me, first of all, that they know this house is occupied with a child and they're still going in. At that point, you've got to basically acknowledge this is a home invasion and you're probably going to have to kill this kid, or worse.
Yeah, they perfectly well knew when they returned the child was there. So they had to be having some kind of contingency plan. And I counted 4 times that they threatened to kill Kevin. If I'm a child, I'm getting out of that house because I think he now knows the van they drive in. He's watched them. He will identify them to the police. They have to keep Kevin quiet. This is going to turn into, I hope they wouldn't do anything, really terrible to Kevin.
Like yank his balls off and boil him in motor oil?
How did that pass the censors? You know what I mean? Like everything else, you can't curse. But listen, ripping an 8-year-old's balls that probably haven't dropped and then boiling them in hot motor oil, perfectly acceptable.
One word, Raj, Espanol.
Yeah, so, you can swear in foreign languages. But Marv doesn't even bat an eye. So that tells me Harry has either done this before or made these threats before. They are serial, potentially child killers.
All right, but if they're child killers, why are they giving him advice on the sidewalk? When they almost hit him, they're like, "Hey kid, be careful. Be you got to watch out for cars or you're going to get hurt."
You only kill the children you need to.
Oh, see, I took that as a threat. I actually took that as a threat. They were threatening him. It's like when someone's running a racket, and you go and, oh, this is a really nice shop. It'd be a shame if someone destroyed it. That's a real pretty girlfriend. It'd be a shame if something happened to her face.
You guys are scary. You guys are Harry and Marv. I'm the Kevin McCallister of this podcast.
It's like you said, Raj, we're Northerners.
So on Christmas Day, Kevin is disappointed that find his family is still gone. He's cleaned up all of his booby traps. He's seen the wet bandits be hauled away by the police officers. Things are going well, but he still wakes up on Christmas Day. His family is still not there. He then hears his mom enter the house and call for him. They reconcile and are soon joined, like 30 seconds later joined, by the rest of the McAllisters, who waited in Paris until they could get a direct flight to Chicago. Kevin keeps silent about his encounter with Harry and Marv, although Peter finds Harry's missing gold tooth. Kevin then observes Marley reuniting with his son and his family. Old Man Marley notices Kevin, and the pair wave to each other before Old Man Marley and his family go into the house. Buzz, the older brother, suddenly calls out, "Kevin, what did you do to my room?" At which point Kevin runs off. End movie.
Okay, so Kevin has no problem cleaning tar off of the stairs. He has no problem fixing the obviously burned door handle and scorched front door, all these broken glass. He couldn't bother to fix poor Buzz's shelves. He's asking to get caught.
I agree, Big D. He de-iced the stairs. I mean, now we don't know. I mean, maybe the tar is still there. Maybe the nail's still there. Maybe part of, Marv's foot is still there. We're not quite sure what's going on with the entire house. But I agree. He did seem to do. I mean, the house looked nicer. I think he cleaned the whole house after everybody left because they left in a hurry. They just left a mess everywhere. He cleaned the whole thing up. But this scene bothered me when Mom gets home because at least you could give her the dignity after all she went through of being kind of a hero in this, right? Like she, what would have been even cooler is if Mom showed up and actually took the burglars out, something like that. But instead, they just show up, oh, silly Mom, if you would have just waited and been chill with everybody else. But I don't understand why everybody else came back. You just wasted your entire France trip.
No, everybody else did not come back. Frank and his wife did not come back. They stayed in Paris.
Yeah, I think their family is just huge. Like when Kevin is sleeping in his parents' bed and he pulls up the photo of his family and he's like talking to it, those are all the kids that are in his family. So the cousins and the aunt and the uncle stayed in Paris.
Yeah, and this goes back to one of the early scripts had Frank as the mastermind behind the burglary, that he actually had gone and set up Marv and Harry to burglarize the house when they were gone. So in some of the earlier scripts, he was even a bigger dick than he was in the final cut.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah, also, thank God the blizzard that comes on Christmas Day doesn't delay the family's flights into O'Hare, right?
I mean, like, listen, if it rains for 15 minutes, your plane's getting delayed 5 hours in Chicago O'Hare. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. So that's the end of Home Alone. I'll go around the horn. Gene, did you think this movie held up, and would you recommend it as a family fun Christmas film that you would like to watch?
Yeah, overall, it's weird. After all the criticism and plot points we pointed out, it's still holds up. I mean, it's very entertaining. It's something that you can kind of have on the screen and pick it up at any point in the movie and go, oh yeah, I remember this. I was a bit surprised that it took so long to get into the traps. I thought they came earlier, but overall, yeah, it's something I'd be proud to have on the big screen when the whole family is gathered around the tree.
What say you, Big D?
Yeah, I think much like The Polish, I think this was an enjoyable holiday film. I think it held up. Again, the problems that we had with it, when you're talking about what type of movie it is, are minor. It was enjoyable. The only thing that really took away the movie's enjoyment for me, and I don't know if it was you guys as well, was knowing where Macaulay Culkin would kind of go and the trouble he would get into. I found myself often thinking of that, this cute little kid, and that kind of took me out of it. But just judging it on the movie, well worth it. I enjoyed it, and I will definitely watch it again.
More than anything, and I agree with both of y'all, and I highly recommend Home Alone to anyone else if you haven't watched it. It is a fun family Christmas movie. It ranks up there for me as a Christmas story, not only because it's a tight script, it's nearly flawless from a script execution and directorial perspective, but the amount of Christmas music that's throughout. Like, it's all the hits. It's like Bing Crosby's greatest hits. You know, it's all the ones you recognize. It is the perfect, in my opinion, the perfect modern day Christmas film. And in fact, here in Scottsdale, Arizona, they're replaying Home Alone in theaters this Christmas season, which I think is great.
And you know how you always talk about remaking it? Have you guys seen the memes? This is the one movie you could never, ever remake, because the entire premise is based on like zero modern technology. The meme that says, you know, Home Alone 2 in the modern day. It's like, hey, Kevin, you're lost. Kevin texts the mother, hey, we're back home. Like, there's the entire premise is based on a lack of communication. There's no way you could do this again.
No, agreed. It was a much more simpler time in 1990. It's almost it's a period piece like Christmas Story without being a period piece.
Yeah, I miss those days when a child could just disappear.
In a van, a plumbing van.
Or a mother could just disappear.
So that concludes Shat the Movies review of Home Alone. I'm going to give it, like on our Shat meter, guys. Again, I'll remind everyone, it's been a while. So 1 wipe is nearly flawless, a perfect movie. 5 wipes mean it is the worst Shat possible. On a Shat scale, how many wipes would you give this movie, Gene?
I'm going to go with 3 wipes, gentlemen. 3. I felt it was a really good movie, very entertaining, but it didn't strike any sort of a personal chord with me that made me think it was exemplary.
Big D.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 2.5. We've come across some recent really great movies, and as though this one's good, you know, it's not a complete clean, ghost movement, but it wasn't a complete mess either.
I'm going to go with a 1 wipe. It's a 1 wipe movie for me. It's like I said, it's almost a perfect movie for what it is trying to accomplish, which, you know, it still holds up for me. So anyway, Big D or Gene, if they want to follow us more, how can they do that?
We are on Twitter and pretty much every other social media at Shat the Movies. Also, you can subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, and any other place where fine podcasts are found.
Yeah, and now that Westworld is done for the season, we're going to start back up the polls, where each week we're going to give you 4 films to choose from, and then each week we will go with the popular movie for that week. I think this week we might try to do one more holiday movie before we put the poll back up. But if you have any suggestions, please email us at hosts@shatthemovies. And go to the website, comment on the movies we have, share with a friend. You got plenty of time here for the holidays. Sit around, watch some of the classics, and share your thoughts with us.
Also, Big D, that email address, hosts@shatthemovies. If anybody is a cop or works for Child Protective Services and could tell us the proper procedure to follow if you leave your child at home and go to Europe, please let us know. I'd love to know what you're actually supposed to do.
Yeah, one of the cool things that we did on Shat on TV is we actually had a viewer email response episode. And listen, if we get enough responses, I would love to do just a quick 15-minute response episode, either at the tail end of our next episode or maybe even as a standalone, like a corrections and omissions or, something, interesting that you came across or how this movie affected your life. Or if you are a Sergeant Ballsack, we want to hear from you. So on behalf of my 2 co-hosts, Gene Lyons and Big D, this is Roger Roper saying we will see you next time on Shat the Movies.
At the Christmas party, and the terrorists were overzealous, but they were sweet.